From the day I showed up in Annapolis, I wanted to be on submarines. I went to Annapolis, joined the Navy in 1955. I went to my first ship, a destroyer, which is a small surface warship. I was 3 years on that ship, was a chief engineer, and then was transferred to nuclear power school in Vallejo, California. 6 months there, 6 months in nuclear power training unit in Idaho, where I was trained on one of the 4 engine rooms of the aircraft carrier Enterprise. The Enterprise has 4 propellers, 4 engine rooms, and it was a training facility for Navy officer and enlisted operators, as well as a research place for nuclear power propulsion. There were a lot of tests that went on. And so after 6 months in training, then I was kept on another year as a trainer. First child was born while we were there. My family lived 120 miles from Idaho Falls, where we lived. And while I was in nuclear power training, I applied for submarines. I'd always wanted to be on submarines. So I applied for submarines while I was in Idaho. And then from then on, I was always in submarines. I made 02 while I was on the destroyer. Yeah, I made 03 while I was in Idaho. And so when I left Idaho, I went to submarine school, and then as an 03 reported aboard my first boat, USS Permit. And so they did some major modifications to the class. They called it the SubSafe package, and there were some really significant changes on procedures, how you test piping systems before you certify them as being okay, and modified the ballast blow system so that you could dump huge amounts of air into the ballast tanks. I don't know if you've seen the movie Hunt for Red October, when the submarine literally flies out of the water, and that was real. That was not a phony picture, and that was a result of the emergency blow system that you can just... But anyway, my first boat was Permit, and I showed up there in about 64.
So the Gulf of Tonkin, that's kind of what kicked off the Vietnam War, 1965. What sub were you on? Were you still on the Prospect at that time, or had you changed to submarines?
I was on Permit. We didn't ever recognize much about the Vietnam War. Submariners did not. There were a few there were a very few number of submarine activities during Vietnam War. My life was never in jeopardy. It was really a neat duty. You asked what we do through the day. Well, 8 hours on watch. I would stand 8 hours in the control room, driving, if you will. I was the officer of the deck. And then there would be 8 hours back aft, being the engineering officer of the watch, operating the reactor plant. And then I'll give myself 6 or 7 hours of sleep, and that leaves another 8 hours or 9 hours to eat, do my administrative tasks about the boat, and you had plenty to do. There was no lack of activities or things that needed to be done.
What was eating like? Did you guys have a chow hall, or was it meals ready to eat at all times?
Yeah, you bet we did. We had dining room. The crew would watch a movie there, play cards. The officers had a little wardroom with a table and bench seating in there. And the food you asked, enlisted in the military get their food provided. It's part of being in the military. Officers have to buy their food from somewhere. and on board ship you buy it from the crew's mess. So the officers ate the same food. We had to pay for it. In the Air Force, your supply officer is authorized a certain amount of money to buy food for the mess for which he is responsible for. And it's dependent upon the number of mouths that he's going to feed. Same in the Navy. In submarines, however, there is a bonus thrown in. So the supply officer on a submarine he has more money to spend per person on food. And golly, we had lobster occasionally. I mean, the whole crew had lobsters. Prime rib, we ate well. So submarines eat very, very well.
How did you communicate with Carl when he was away for 6 months at a time?
28 words was all we were allowed every 6 weeks. And so I would get it all written out and then send it to Ford Island in Honolulu area there. And then someone would read it. And if it was at all negative, it couldn't go. It had to be optimistic. You couldn't talk about anybody dying. So they would send it. I think it went to a satellite maybe, and it went down to something trailing in the water behind the submarine. I don't know. I'm getting my submarines mixed up. But then the message would go in crypto to somebody aboard the submarine. They would read it and decide whether it was okay to give to the person.
You two have been married for 60 years, and your granddaughter wants to know, what's the secret sauce? What's the secret to your success?
I don't know. I think it's ups and downs, and things happen, but you have endurance and you have commitment. It's just been a really good life. It really has. I mean, it's had its difficulties. I remember I was so sad every time he would leave, because I would think, oh, you know, we took pictures, all of us together, and I knew that about an hour later he would leave. So I would be really sad and a little bit angry inside, because it had to happen, but I knew it had to happen, and then it would be over, and then we would just trudge on.